It's Friday, it's 12 noon. And what does that mean? It is time for another episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. And today we're going to talk about something that if you're a business owner, you're probably thinking about it, hopefully. And that is the word profit. And this is a really great week for me because just last week, I launched my newest book, which is Where Did the Profit Go? And actually, what's really great about this is Tommy Mello read this book and gave me the honor of writing the foreword in it. And his foreword is very impressive. Just reading his foreword is worth getting this book. But that's the big question. And as we roll towards the end of the year, we just entered the fourth quarter. That's a question so many of us have. In fact, sometimes we get our tax bill and we got to pay tax on this profit. And we're thinking, where did it go? What happened to my profit? Why's my bottom line not any higher? I hear people talking about grossing all this money, but the funny thing is, most of them never talk about the bottom line. Here's your big thing. Next time somebody's telling you they run a multi-million-dollar business, ask them what their bottom line net percentage is. Ask them what the ROI on the business really is. Because, see, that's one of the purposes of business. We want profit, and the reason we want profit is to be able to build the business, do the things we want to do, not just in business, but in life. And if you have this profit, hey, you can donate it. You can help charities. You can help other people. There's all kinds of things that you can do if you have profit. And something else about a lack of profit is it puts a stress on you. When you don't have profit, you have to wonder what happened. So anyway, we're celebrating this week because, yes, I got a new book published. Put about 9 months into this thing. And I also want to send out my thanks to Sarah Shippey up in Vermont. Sarah has been my editor on quite a few of my publications over the years, does a super job for me. And the reason being is, folks, when I write just like I talk, and you can't print a book that sounds like I talk. So Sarah takes my words and turns them into something that is suitable for reading, okay? Because that's the whole idea of why we write books. So today we're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about profit. And in this book, if you haven't ordered it, please do. I'm going to put a link up in a minute to get it. And it's not about making money, because I can tell you, I'm not going to retire on book profits. I write books to share information to help other people. If I was trying to make money, believe me, I'd be charging a whole lot more than I charge for these books when I write them. So, Josh, I'm going to start off with you today. We're going to give you the opportunity to go first. So, what would you talk? What will be the first thought in your head today?
This being your 10th book, why do you keep writing them?
Okay, here's the whole thing. One of this is, Josh, I want something after I'm gone. I want to build a legacy. I probably have written more words in the chimney service industry than any individual. Articles, Facebook posts. I'd say I probably have the record for the number of words that have been published on chimney sweep forums and other forums and in articles. And it's a way of taking what I learned from watching other people, from personal experiences, and sharing with other people. When I wrote my first book in 2016, I never thought there'd be a day that I would have published 10, but my goal is to publish one book a year, and I'm ahead of that goal pretty good right now. So does that answer your question?
It does. And if anybody's ever seen you type, your poor keyboard.
Yes, my keyboard, if you look at it, the letters are wore away. In fact, it's time for me to get a new computer because my letters are completely worn away. And yeah, I bang a keyboard pretty hard. I've had people come to me and I was sitting in a class and would ask me to please type slower and quieter.
Why are you so angry when you type would be an angrier question.
Because I'm trying to get the message out, Josh. It's just eating me alive, and I got to bang that keyboard to get it out. Have you beat me up enough yet, brother?
No.
Okay. Well, you're done. We're going to go to somebody else and see what the thoughts are. So, Brandy, you always come up with great questions. What's on your mind about this profit thing that we're talking about today?
Well, first of all, great book. I was really impressed when I was reading it. In fact, I'm going to make my entire management team here at Flues Brothers read it. But in one of the first couple chapters, one of the things that I guess shocked me was you were talking about a company and callbacks, and they took their callbacks from 20% down to around 3%. That's a 17% difference. I don't know what business owner would not want to achieve that. How is that possible?
Well, Randy, it came about because they started tracking, number one, what every callback was. And here's what they found out, and it's detailed in the book. And they found out, and this was my friend Charlie Quayle, who I dedicated this book to because I've learned so much from him over the years. But one day I walked in Charlie's office. He was between here and Raleigh that I went to a lot. And he was sitting there in his office, and on the wall was this 4x8 sheet of styrofoam. And on this wall, he had boxes and lines between each of the boxes. And when Charlie was thinking, he was stroking his chin. If you ever had Charlie in a class, that's when I knew I had Charlie thinking, because he'd start stroking his chin. So I said, Charlie, what in the world are you looking at? What's up there? He said, Jerry, that's a flow chart of our business. And we're on this lean thing. We're on this waste tracking. And this is what we found out. We have found out that the majority of callbacks, the majority of issues that we have result from an improper exchange of information. The information is fumbled. And he shared with me his thoughts about fumbles and bad handoffs. And actually, I took that, and I've actually done seminars on that entitled Fumbles and Bad Handoffs. But they was able to isolate this because what he did, he tracked every single day. If you went in and Charlie was holding a morning meeting, and there were times I actually recorded these morning meetings, they actually tracked this waste from the day prior. They had a waste tracking goal. So what they would do is every single day, they would track it. And on this flip chart over to the side of the wall, they would write on it every single waste incident from the day before and the reason why. They would then take that flip chart into their weekly managers meeting, which a lot of people may call a level 10, and they would look at this and see what the problems are. Then they would assign someone the task. Is it a lack of SOP? Is it a lack of culture? Is it a lack of capacity of the people doing this? Or is it simply that they refuse? So what they were able to do was drastically cut their callbacks, because callbacks, Brandy, as you and I know, whenever we do a postmortem inspection, a simple mistake of $200, which is very minor, can result in a cost of thousands of dollars. And then when you look at the cost of sales to compensate for it, which is also explained in this book, the formula. In fact, Cheryl had some questions on the way I presented the formula for the cost of waste. But when you look at this, you move this bottom line waste and turn it into profit dollars, because profit always pays for the waste, always pays for the waste. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I like that. Profit always pays for the waste.
The profit always has to. You've got two options. Whenever you quote a job, you can either quote waste into it, such as, we know we're going to have an 8% waste, so we've got to go up 8% to cover the cost of waste. Or it's coming out of the profit side. There is no other, there's nowhere else for it to come from.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, Cheryl, what about you?
Okay, my thing is, I know you dealt with Charlie for a lot of years. And I know this didn't happen overnight with Charlie. So, and he's one of our biggest cases that we know exactly where it came from and went to. So where did he come from and where did he go to?
Where did he come from? Okay, this is the really amazing part of Charlie Quayle's story. And as you look at this book, not only did I dedicate this to Charlie and his memory, but there's actually a very long interview with Charlie, and where Charlie talked about where they had cut their waste down, their callbacks, and it took them 9 years of diligence every single day, and they took their waste to below 1% of their gross, where many companies are running. Randy, we see it 10%, 15%, 18%
Oh
of
yeah,
gross.
high.
And then the corresponding amount of sales dollars it takes to get that is unreal. So they did this through diligence, tracking, measuring. Every single day they went to this. They went to their system and they cut off just a little bit, because one of the principles of lean is continuous ongoing improvement. So the principle is, we're going to get a little bit better today and a little bit better the next day. And after a period of time, we've really accomplished something. Does that answer the question?
Does.
There you go. So Josh, back to you. Your turn, brother.
So I wanted to talk about the process of stamping it out. What is the and I say stamping it out, kind of like stamping out a fire, and making sure it's out thoroughly. I kind of equate it to the trick birthday candles. You know, you give them to your kids, you tell them to blow them out, and the next thing you know, there's spit all over the cake. What is that kind of first process to make sure that fire doesn't happen again?
Certainly. So the first thing does, every time there's a mistake, every single time, there's 3 reasons for every mistake. Number 1, there is no system. Number 2, the system is wrong. Number 3, someone didn't follow the system. Now, if they didn't follow the system, you got to dig a little bit deeper. Is it because the system, they couldn't comprehend it because of the way it was written? Or number 2, did they not have the training to be able to do the system? Number 3, did they not have the capacity? In other words, this particular job or task is beyond their abilities. Or number 4, are they just plain refusing to follow it? So you got to narrow it down to that. If the system isn't written, Josh, you got to write a system. If the system is wrong, you got to modify the system. And if someone's not following the system, you have to trace it on down. And that's through what you just heard me say, the word that Brandy came up with some years ago, which is a post-mortem inspection. So Brandy, can you kind of tell people what a post-mortem inspection is as we talk about this in waste?
Yes. So anytime there's an error in a company, typically there were multiple people that could have prevented that error. It's typically not just one person's fault. And so in a postmortem, it kind of comes from like my nursing days where they do a postmortem after a patient dies in the hospital. In this case, we're looking at something that went wrong, some sort of large waste, and we're following it and chasing the steps all the way back to the very beginning to see all the different points where we had a chance to catch that before it became a full-blown mistake and correct it.
Mm-hmm. And that's where the post, but here's the amazing thing, Josh, as you run this, a lot of times we're going to suggest, and this is where Brandy and I have worked with some mutual clients to actually dig deeper. And again, here's an example. We had a material one time that was ordered wrong, was taken to the job site. That material had a cost to the company of around $275. When we ran the post-mortem inspection of all the costs, clerical, everything else, we were over $2,100 was the direct cost to the company. Then if we compute the number of sales dollars that it takes to pay that waste, which is contingent upon the net profit, because the higher your net profit is, the less dollars it costs. I recently did an analysis for a company, not going to mention the name here, but had a gross that looked great, but the net profit was so low that the cost to replace $1 of waste was over $33 in sales. $33. And this is what we're going to fix in that company. And this is what, and that's where you see it when you come in from outside. It's like I talk about the company that I just did my last analysis for. And I talked to my client right before this call. And he said, Jerry, since you were here, I'm seeing things I've never seen before. This waste is now driving me crazy because I see it everywhere. But we just get so used to it being there that we just don't see it anymore.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense, Josh?
It does. And then, I wanted to hit on like the fourth one. Is it the person? Because if I remember going back when Mr. the Wolf was on here, he talks about he had someone, swimming against the current,
Yeah.
And
if that's the case, it may be that they're going to have to be removed. I can well remember attending a morning meeting one time, and afterwards the guys were getting ready to going out for the day, do their job. And there was one guy in that building that was already saying, there is no way I can get this done today. Well, then come to find out, this was this guy's attitude just about every day. And what he did, he worked his tail off to make sure that he was right and didn't get done that day, which resulted in piles of waste. And that company had to make a decision. He didn't fit it within their culture.
No, I found that out first when I went on my digital journey of employees refusing to not use crutches, to be accountable. They weed themselves out pretty quickly.
Yeah, they do. And so but you got to be on it every day. It's kind of like if you ever take a picture of your showroom, Josh, there at Tri-County. If I go in and take a picture and show you the picture, I'll guarantee you're going to see things in that picture that you're used to seeing every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right before we started this, there was a piece of molding right in that back corner behind your right shoulder. Yep. And I saw it. I said, hey, that looks like a broomstick back there. And you said, no, it's a piece of molding. I said, well, move it before we go on camera, okay? Because it looks like you got a broom back there that you might be ready to ride out. You might be a male witch. We don't know.
It's a warlock, Jerry.
There you go. Well, that's a male witch. Don't get down in too much there. So, Brandy, what will be your next input into this profit discussion?
Well, first, I have a little story for you. I have to tell you that your book actually inspired me. Yesterday morning, I was, finishing up reading it, and we have a team member who had a pretty big mistake in our company this week. And I was thinking about the write-up, and I'll tell you sometimes, and I think Josh, as a business owner, you can probably agree with me because I know you've done write-up. Sometimes it feels like more punishment for us, the business owner that has to sit down and write the write-up, than the employee that just has to sign it. And so I was trying, yeah, it is. And so I was trying to think like, what else could I do? And as I was preparing for today, I thought, I'm going to create a waste report form, and I'm going to have this technician fill out a very comprehensive waste report form on this specific incident. And I think going forward, I'm going to start enacting that a lot more. I'm waiting on this individual to finish it up, and we're going to go over it and review it. But I think that's going to be more impactful to see how much waste is really involved and how much money is really involved than giving a write-up of, oh, you did bad.
Yeah. Are you going to do it on paper, or are you going to do it on digitally?
It's on a jot form.
Well,
I saved some trees.
Right. But see, here's one of the things that I do to illustrate this, Brandy, is whenever I'm meeting with the team and we're talking about waste, I have a pile of play money sitting over here. And this is fake money I buy off Amazon. So it's $100 bills. So what we do is I have Christina, she stamps some of them with waste, and then she stamps others as sales. And what I do is I lay down one of those $100 bills that says waste. And then I say, okay, how many sales dollars do you think it takes to do this, to compensate for this? And everybody will give me their numbers. Now, I know that number because I know the net profit percentage of the company. So then I start counting out that number of dollars. Imagine that when you're sitting there. So what I've seen is illustrating it. Sometimes paper doesn't do it. And Josh, digital doesn't do it. Sometimes you got to lay it out in front of people in a way that they understand. And that's how I found one of the best ways to get across, Brandy, is using that Amazon Play money to throw it out. Even though my grandkids come through my office and they're seeing all those $100 bills, they think they're real over there. It's like, what are you doing with all that money? I say it's all fake, you know.
I like it. Okay. And so now to my question. You talk in the book about the daily huddle. How important is that daily huddle in keeping the waste down or identifying how we can prevent the waste happening in the future?
The daily huddle is everything. If you remember right, when we've had Tommy Mello on here, who has all these offices, 30 some offices around the country, they have a daily huddle from using Zoom to beam to all their offices, and they're dealing with different time zones. But here's what I see. People that drop the daily meeting will start to decline. It happens in every case whenever you don't have this morning meeting. And what happens is you're thinking, I don't have the time. We're busy. We got to get out to it, do it. So we head right back out in the field and we make the same stupid mistakes over and over and over. But you've also got to do this. You have to celebrate. Part of lean is you celebrate the victories. So as this waste total comes down, we start dropping. And you're not going to cut it from 12% to 1% tomorrow. Remember, as Charlie told me in the interview, it took him 9 years of day by day diligence to the same process and just cutting into it just a little bit today and developing these SOPs and developing up all these things to revert this back. So is the morning huddle important? You better believe it. And again, Charlie details it so well in that article because, to be honest with you, Sarah did not edit any of Charlie's comments. We lost Charlie last year. And like I said, part of this book was to honor him and what he was sharing with the industry. So as you get this book, this is the real stuff, folks. This is nothing made up. This is not theory. This is going to give you a real life story of a company, a service company that accomplished this goal.
Thank you.
Okay. Cheryl, what you got next?
Okay. Most companies have warehouses. They have vehicles. Charlie had both. I know what Charlie's look like. So explain where a lot of the profit holes is within the warehouse and with an unorganized truck.
Yeah. In the warehouse, if you ever walked, and Josh, didn't you visit down at Charlie's Quails one time? Didn't you go down there and walk through that warehouse?
I did.
And when you went into Charlie's warehouse, there was nothing extra. There were no leftover pieces. There was no boneyard. They ordered what they needed. They followed the Toyota just-in-time ordering process. In fact, when you went down there, they had one loading dock for materials to come into that building, and they were all dispersed out the front door. And they used job carts. When they came in every morning, all the materials for that day was loaded into a job cart. So Joe had his job cart, Bill had his, Sam had his. Everybody had their materials pulled. And with Charlie had an LED clock on the wall. And they actually timed the amount of time every morning when those trucks pulled out of the parking lot to hit the road. Because how much time is wasted just getting out of the door in the mornings? So that's what they were doing. They were tracking all these things that were happening. When were they arriving on job sites? So when was all this happening? And we just lost Cheryl for some reason. I don't know, her internet might have went out, so hopefully she'll be back. So, Brandy, does that make sense to you, what I just said?
It does, absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. So, Josh, you got another question?
So if someone wanted to go down this route of, let's just say, leaning things out, what would be the first step for them?
First thing is they have to realize they have a problem. If they don't realize they have a problem, they're not going to be able to fix it. What the business owner has to understand is it's his fault. He is allowing it. If there's things wrong in your business, it's not your employee's fault, it's your fault. You're allowing it. At this point, to be honest with you, You may have to call an expert in to help you through that. In the case of Charlie, the story, and you'll read the story in there about him meeting a guy by the name of Bob Arbel. Bob Arbel lived in Pittsburgh. They met actually out walking one day and they kept seeing each other taking walks in the same direction. So they started talking. And Charlie asked him one day, well, what do you do? And Bob told him that he was retired and had worked in Toyota suppliers, leaning them out, and got Charlie interested. So he brought Bob in, and Bob looked at the operation and gave him a score. And when he gave him the score, it was straight up front, everywhere that he was failing. The placement of materials. I think one story that got me one time, I don't know if you guys know it or not, but if you remember Dave Pomeroy was actually going into lean training. And Tom Urban hired him to come into his plant. But one of the things Dave did was reorganize workbenches. And he analyzed how long someone where they had to go to get a screwdriver, and where just not having the tools in the proper place. So it's not just the warehouse. It is the trucks themselves, leaning out those trucks, making sure everything is organized. It is neat. Just a couple of weeks ago, I've started doing lean warehouses, lean organization of trucks. Just went to a company a couple of weeks ago, and we looked and we dumped every truck out. And in fact, we did a broadcast about the other week about the truck and the waste that's there. We've talked about waste so many times. And like I said, but these are the real world examples that can help you. So whose got another question?
Brandy.
In the book, you talk about SOP. Did you hear the way he said that to me? Brandy. In the book, Josh and I really fight like brother and sister.
No kidding. And as the father, it makes my life difficult.
You mentioned SOP and SOG. Can you explain to us the difference in those and why it's so important to have them?
Okay. SOPs, SOGs, manuals, as Al Levy calls them, they're basically all the same thing. They are a written process that explains every task. And Brandy, I'm going to bring this home to you. Your husband, Jeremy, possesses how much information in his head about chimneys?
So much.
So much. So here's the question. If something happened to Jeremy, where's that information going?
Yeah, exactly.
And that, Josh, is kind of why I write books. I've got this thing about, I think I've got good stuff to share with people. And that's why I write the books I do. That's why I write the articles, why I do the broadcasts, why I do all these other things. Be honest with you, it's a selfish reason. That's a personal legacy that I have, that I want. I don't want my ideas to die, because, hey, we're all going to end. One day we end on this earth. But I don't want that to go away. And if we look at it, that's what a library is. And Brandy, you're a reader. You read books by people that are living or dead. And how do you get that information if somebody hasn't wrote it down? So you got to write down this information that's here. If you don't give your people these guidelines, how to do it, how are they going to do it right? How are they going to do it? When you look at it, we look at McDonald's, and McDonald's has high school kids running the smallest business in America. We look at Chick-fil-A, and if you go into Chick-fil-A, if you ask a Chick-fil-A employee a question, their answer is, it's my pleasure. And they're known by this. And every single time we ride by the Chick-fil-A, which is like 5 miles from here, it's lined up with a double row at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, wanting them chicken filet sandwiches and nuggets.
Yeah, and I believe that's their customer experience is just so different than you get anywhere else.
It's truly different. Well,
but you're right, they're high school kids that they're training. I always try to trip them up. Like, yeah. I always purposely say thank you several times trying to trip them up, and I can never trip them up.
Yeah, and it isn't. And one of my clients, a lady that works there, Christina Owens, She was a Chick-fil-A manager, and coming in with the culture lessons that she had learned at Chick-fil-A were unreal. Well, Cheryl, welcome back. You disappeared on me. Where'd you go?
I guess the profit ran out somewhere. Spectrum is sitting right outside my window, so I guess they're working and trying to make a profit.
So they attacked your internet, not mine.
Well, they're two entirely different lines, and they're
I
on
know
different.
that. We're pretty lean. We have two internet lines. We refuse to share them. She got hers and I got mine. Okay. So anyway, so Cheryl, you got any more questions to bring up on this?
And you may have said something while you were doing it. I really don't on it, but I would like to forward one. Do you have any upcoming projects that you'd like to share while we have everyone here that may lead into this?
Upcoming what now?
Upcoming book projects.
I'm in consideration. Like I said, I want to turn one out a year, and that's one of the biggest things is what will the topic be? And so I'm kind of running it through my mind right now. I'm thinking about. I've been teaching a lot on believability as a part of sales, so I'm thinking about making that as the next one. But yeah, and you know as well as I do that I sit down here banging out a lot of times, and I go upstairs and you say what you've been doing. I say I've been writing again. So I kind of follow what Zig Ziglar said one time when Scott McKain asked him about writing a book, because I encourage every client of mine to write a book about what they do. And Scott, Scott met Zig Ziglar one day, and Zig asked Scott McKain, said, "Well, when are you going to write your first book, Scott?" And Scott said, "Well, I just haven't put it together. I just don't know what to do, don't know what to write about." And Zig said, "Well, I've never written a book." Now, Zig Ziglar has written, Cheryl, how many books has Zig written, did he write in his lifetime?
You couldn't put them in my office.
You couldn't put them in my office. So everybody on this call that you're listening to right now, I've encouraged to write a book. Brandy, how many times you told me, Brandy, write a book? How many times?
Over 100.
Over 100 times, because same thing. She's got so much information. So Zig said, "Scott, I've never written a book, but Mr. Ziglar, you've written many books." He said, "No, I just wrote a few pages every day. And before long, I had a book." And Brandy, you've heard me say that before, haven't you?
I have.
Because I'm going to keep pushing her to write that book sooner or later.
His son verified that's a true statement. Every day, unless he was sick and couldn't hold his head up, he wrote pages.
That's it. So Josh, you got anything further you would add in on this today?
Well, I was going to comment on the SOPs versus the SOGs. I don't do the SOG part of SOPs, which is, why do we do this? I come from that, the younger kids, I'm getting so old now, the younger kids want that. Why do we have to do that mission sort of statement for that SOP? I mean, I've got hundreds of SOPs. I don't put that on there. What is the importance of doing the SOG?
The importance is giving the reason, because in my suggested way of writing SOPs is we want to give the reason why this SOP is being written. And I want to write a summary at the end of what we will now accomplish by following this SOP. But again, in my opinion, SOPs, SOGs, manuals, they're all the information that we need to hand our people so they can follow our directives and do a task and be brought quicker to the table, and where they don't have to ask us a question. Josh, what's it like when your people ask you the same question 3 to 4 times?
It gets my blood boiling, Jerry. You know that.
I know that. That's why I asked you the question. But is that not why you started your wiki page? Is you got so fed up with people asking you the same questions over and over?
Exactly why I started it.
And so,
for one reason.
Yeah. So right now, give me an estimate of the number of hours that you have invested into what you call your wiki page, what I call a digital knowledge base, which is SOPs, processes, procedures. How many hours you think you've dedicated to that?
Well over 10,000.
When did you start?
15 years ago, I started building my databases.
Yeah.
And it was just, and it started off as, it could be as simple as a manual archive. It could be simple as a spreadsheet you share. across multiple people. It starts off very small, little small bits, a workflow, and then these things just like if I have a workflow, but then there'll be 10 pieces on that workflow, but each workflow is going to be backstopped by another document eventually. I mean, and the angrier you get, the more motivated you are to write these things.
So you agree that when you're angry, that's when you can really turn SOPs out?
Yes. As you know, I've had several conversations with you about solar panels, and I've reached out to Brandy about solar panels, and I've been doing a lot of research about solar panels because, we're coming across it more and more. And we had someone who had a solar panels less than 12 inches from the chimney on a large chimney, and we didn't want to be responsible for breaking them.
Yeah. And Brandy, do you remember when we interviewed Clay Lamb on here?
Yes.
And if you remember, we interviewed Clay about his story.
Mm-hmm.
And his story was he had a fatality in his company that came due to electrocution. And the cause for that was electricity was transmitted through the fog. Do you remember that conversation that day?
I do.
Very emotional. You remember that?
Yes, I cried through it.
Yes, you did. And so, but the whole thing was, it's been amazing since I learned that when I've shared that with people, because we actually shared it in the safety book that Robbie Murphy and I released last year. But, not only is this going to work on your profits, it's going to help you conserve accidents from happening. It's going to help you to meet the safety standards. It's also going to help you. Brandy, won't this help you in the event of a fatality if you have these documented processes that people are to follow?
Absolutely. It can really save you in fines and a lot of trouble with OSHA.
That's it, because that's no fun. So anyway, I got Josh's. Brandy, anything else you want to ask today?
Well, I have tons of questions, but I'm going to kind of wrap it up in kind of one. I guess if I were to write a book, I would probably want to research why people are so afraid of accountability. And you talk about accountability in your book. And I feel like you could have all these processes in place. You can have all these SOPs, but if no one is holding the team accountable to following them, then it does no good. Can you talk a little bit about that buy-in from the team and someone being in charge of holding the team accountable?
Certainly. And in fact, earlier this morning, I had a client call. And I've classified this guy, and Cheryl has assessed him, that he's a really nice guy. Okay? A really nice guy. And holding people accountable are very difficult for him. But last week, he finally held an employee accountable on Friday. And the employee complied. And see, this is what we know about the millennial population. They may not tell you this, but they actually crave accountability. They want accountability. And as a leader, this is what you have to do to effectively lead people. So accountability is everything. If there's no accountability for not following those SOPs, it's your fault. And if you're going to go in and do the work and develop the systems, go into lean, if you think it's going to happen without accountability, you're wasting your time. It's going to be a lot of work. Like I said, Charlie spent 9 years on this. 9 years. So this is why I dedicated this book as his memory, as a legacy to Charlie. Cheryl, anything last?
Just one. Okay, we've talked about present time. The landscape of businesses is changing every day. So what do you see about the concept of profit leakage evolving in the future? Where do you see that going?
Say that again.
Okay, we're in this time. The future's evolving. Where do you see the profit going to in the future? Do you see more people? Do you think they'll become accountable as you're talking about and work on this, or do you think it's just it's an ever increasing whole?
I think what's going to happen for companies that don't make the move into this, I think they're going to slowly slide into oblivion. I think they're going to end up being bankrupt. I think they're going to never get their dreams. I think they're going to go through life and hate every day that they get up and go to work because it's not making them happy and their workforces aren't happy. And Brandy, as much as you as I have worked together in this and with clients, can you verify that not holding accountability wrecks a culture?
Oh, absolutely. Quick little story. I made somebody cry this morning. I've kind of felt bad about it today, but I had an interview at 7:30. This person asked if I could come in early to do an interview. And so I agreed. And 7:30 rolls around and the person's not here. 7:34, they get here. And I said, I'm sorry, but part of our company culture is punctuality. And in the instructions you received, it said, if you were late, you will not be interviewed. And he wanted to talk about traffic and all that. And I said, I'm sorry, that's our company culture. I can't interview you. And he walked away crying and kind of ripping off his tie, but he has to be held accountable. And I was telling my husband, I felt bad about it. And he's like, well, he's probably never going to be late for another job interview in his life.
It is. He learned it's bad, but he learned the hard way. And that's what you have to do. I mean, I can guarantee you, I will never fall asleep waiting on an airplane flight again because I can remember getting stuck in Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C. one time. I fell asleep and then I woke up and my plane was gone. So you don't take a nap in the airport when your plane's supposed to depart. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Like I said, this book that I recently released, the name of it is Where Did the Profit Go? The foreword is written by Tommy Mello. Randy, what did you think of Tommy's foreword when you read that?
I really liked it. I loved that Tommy did the foreword for you.
It really was. It was a real honor to be able to put his name on there and say that. So again, our whole mission here in doing this presentation every week is to give you processes, to give you systems that can help you go to where you want to go. I will guarantee you, if you look in and implement lean processes, you go into the SOP process. And if you need help with these things, that's what we do. You can reach out to myself. Hey, you want help with your SOPs and writing them? That's what Josh does. Your office isn't lean because, Brandy, offices aren't real lean a lot of times, are they?
No, there's a lot of waste in the office.
A lot of waste in the office. That's where Brandy comes in. And if you need to know if your people fit the personality profile, that's what Cheryl does, is she looks at people's behavior patterns. All three of us have learned a lot from Cheryl looking and telling us what our behavior patterns are like, okay? So anyway, we appreciate you joining us today on this episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. Order this book. I put the link in the comments. Go straight to Amazon. You can order an electronic version, ebook, the Kindle, or you can order it in the printed. And I just found out the other day, Cheryl, tell them what you can do with an ebook if they have an Alexa. Turn your mic on. Mike. There you go.
Was that the finger you meant to use, Cheryl?
Yes. Yes. No. I do a lot of things, and I have Alexas around the house. So if you have a Kindle book, Alexa can read it, and you can pick up on either Alexa. So I'm doing my makeup, I'll listen while I'm doing that, and then when I'm sitting in here waiting on the client to pop on for an interview, I can listen to it there. And for me, that's good because I don't have to just continually stick with it. I can work it into my day and I get through it. I've read your book basically in 2.5 days, for lack of a better word, in just short spurts.
Yeah, just in short spurts, not just while you were doing your makeup, but doing other things, right?
Yeah, I did it instead of watching TV one day, so I thought that was kind of cool.
There you go. So anyway, we appreciate you joining us this week. We're CVC Success Group. If we can help you take your business to what you dream of it being, reach out to one of us at any time. We'd love to have a phone call, have a conversation with you. And to be honest with you, there's nothing that makes us happier than to see a client reach their business dreams. And with that, we'll see you next week on the next episode of the CVC Home Service Success